everybody, and welcome. My name is Andrea, and I am the potter who normally works at the Island Art Centre. But as the Art Centre is closed at the minute, I'm coming to you directly from my pottery studio to your homes, and hopefully you're turning your homes into a bit of a pottery studio today. So today's workshop, we're going to be working on silly sheep. So this is one of the little characters that I have already fired and glazed. Okay, there's a slight variation on this guy, and I'll show you. This is a really woolly sheep. Okay, so in your clay crate, you will have a bag of clay. One ball of clay is really big, one slightly small. I only have one because it's only me doing the workshop, but normally in the crate there will be two big balls of clay, two small balls of clay. The big ball of clay is going to be for the pot part of our little silly sheep. The small pot or the small ball of clay is for everything else. Okay. If you're working with your mum and it's just you making the little silly sheep, the other pieces of clay, you don't need to make two if you don't want to. The other pieces of clay are perfect for adding all of the balls of wool onto this big woolly sheep. This is a really tough job making all of these. You can see just how many it takes to cover the little sheep. So this is perfect as more of a family project. So this is more of a family project. And if there's two of you, you can make two of these little guys. And you can see I have scratched or sgraffitoed the pattern onto him. I'm not actually sure if you can see that, but I'm going to show you in clay. Once I put the shiny glaze, well, you can just about see the curls of his pattern there. Once I put shiny glaze on pottery, it really doesn't film well. All you get is a reflection, but you'll see it when we're making it. Okay, so hopefully that's very clear. If there's two of you, we'll make this little guy. If there's only one of you, or you want to turn it into more of a family project, we'll work on this guy. Okay, so either way, we're going to start the project the same way. Okay, in your clay crate, you will have a board, and that's a working board that is sitting down in front of you. And that's what we're going to work on. It's absorbent and it'll absorb all of the water from the clay and help it dry out as we're working. You've got the information that a damp cloth is really handy, so hopefully you have that at hand. And a hairdryer. Okay, I have mine over here and I'll plug that in a little while when we need it. In your clay crate, you'll also have some colours. Okay, you'll have a smaller crate. This is going to be the little individual home for your sheep, or when you're finished. Okay, and we have our colours in this other little container. We also have some nice paintbrushes in here and a little stick. Okay, open this guy up, and our two colours we're going to be using today are white and black. Okay, you don't need to use the black if you don't want to, but I'm going to demonstrate how you can use that if you want to. And I'm going to take them out. We don't need them just yet. We have our stick and a sponge. Okay, this little container I want to focus on. This little one is perfect for water. So I've got a little bit of water here, and I'm just going to pour that in there. I only want a little bit because I don't want this spilling. Or if it does spill, it's only a little bit to tidy up. Okay, so that's what we need to get started. Damp cloth, hairdryer at hand, water in our little tub. Okay, so hopefully you've got all those things close at hand. And then it's time to get our clay out of our bag. So the first piece of clay we're going to need is the big ball of clay. We want to keep this small ball of clay nice and moist. Okay, so we want to keep it in the bag. So I'm going to open this up and just take the big ball of clay out. It's in a ball shape, and we want to keep it in that shape. But it's really sticky. Okay, you can see just how much water is on that. This is a really fine modelling clay, and it fires up really nice and white. I know it doesn't look it at the minute, but I'll show you the colour samples later on as it's fired. And I keep referring to fired and glazed. Okay, that means cooked. Basically, just here is my kiln, and that's my potter's oven. And that changes it from clay to pottery just by heat. Okay, so we just heat it up, we just cook it, but we super cook it. Okay, it takes 24 hours to super cook it, and it goes up to 1,000 degrees for the first firing. Okay, then I put it back in again after it's glazed, which is the lovely shine, and it goes up to 1,120 degrees, so it's even higher, and then it has that lovely shimmery sheen that the finished pieces have. Okay, but this clay is really sticky. Okay, so, and it's really fine. It's a lovely fine modeling clay, as I've said. Okay, but it's really sticky. Okay, so you need to just pat it with your hand to take some of that water off. So the heat of our hands will dry up some of that surface water. And you see it's just transferred onto my hand. That dries and becomes quite dusty, which is where the cloth comes in handy. So if it's a little bit damp, it takes off the dust, but also puts a little bit of moisture back in your hands so they don't feel too dry. Okay. If your hands are fed up touching the clay, but we still need to dry it up a little bit, we're going to set it on our board. And we can roll it around our board and leave a little bit of a water track behind. Okay, so that's just leaving the water behind. We don't want to smush and squish the clay. We want it to stay like a lovely round ball because that's the shape we need. It also is completely air bubble free. Okay, there's no air in this clay at all. But if we start smushing it and squishing it, we push air into it. And then when I heat the clay up in the kiln to fire it, those little air bubbles, they heat up and they blast out and they break parts of your pottery. So that's why it's in a lovely ball shape, and that's why we're trying to keep it in a lovely ball shape. Okay, so just keep rolling it around until it feels like it's not quite so sticky anymore. Okay, we still need it to be malleable, which is just nice and movable and shapeable, but we don't want it to be too sticky. Okay, so I think I'm ready. I've rolled this enough and I'm ready to make the shape. Okay, so we know that the big piece of clay is going to be the pot. Now this is called a pinch pot or a thumb pot. We use our pinching fingers, so our thumb and our finger pinching together, or all fingers pinching together helps form the pot. And it's also called a thumb pot because we use the thumb to open up the clay. Okay, so this ball of clay is going to change shape slightly by us putting our thumb in the middle, and then our fingers are on the outside and we shape it. So thumb and pinch pot. Okay, so as I say, it's a really fine clay. It's going to move around very, very easily with your fingers. So we take our time doing this. It's not a race. We want to make sure that we get a nice rounded pot that looks like the belly of a sheep. Okay, so what we do is we put the clay in the hand that we don't write with. This is our better hand. Okay, well, it's my better hand. I'm a right-hander. Okay, if you're left-handed, you'll be like so. Okay, but this is my best hand. This is the one that is really good for fine, tiny little bits of modeling. So this is the one that's going to be the best for pinching. This hand is really important as well. It's going to hold and support the clay, and it's going to let me know that if this thumb gets close to the bottom, okay, and comes dangerously close to coming through, this palm will feel that and I know to stop. So the table or our board doesn't have that sense of sensation. It's not going to tell us anything about how far we've gone down. So it is important to hold the clay in your other hand. Okay, so the best way to do that, if you're not sure, is that you pretend to write, and then that's your thumbs up hand. Okay, so our thumbs up hand is going to sit on the top of the ball. Okay, now our thumb can bend easily, and we don't want it to, because then it will go in at a weird little angle. It won't go straight. So we have to hold our thumb straight and we have to drill it in. Okay, so the clay will get behind any nails, but remember your cloth is at hand. You can wipe it away in a little minute. So I'm going to put my thumb in the middle of the top. Okay, if you can see that. And I'm going to just wiggle it and wiggle it and wiggle it and wiggle it and wiggle it. Now, if your thumb's got tired, or if you don't want to feel that clay in your nail, somebody else in the family can help with this. Okay, so the hand is here and my thumb is going in. Now, before I get too close to the bottom, I can just check with the length of my thumb. I can think, well, I can go beyond my knuckle and I know I won't be through the bottom. See how I'm measuring? Like if I lose all of my thumb, look, I'll be right through the bottom of the pot. So I don't want to do that. So when I'm pushing in my thumb, I know to stop soon. So I can stop now, okay? Because that's just beyond my knuckle, but not the whole thumb lost, okay? I know that I need this to be slightly thick, okay? Because otherwise it's going to have a hole in it. It's not going to serve as a great pot, okay? So I've got my thumb in and now I'm going to wiggle that thumb around. I'm using the pad of my thumb and I'm just smoothing over the hole. I'm going to show you that in a minute. And I'm going to show you it's not perfect, okay? Do you see? It's not perfect at all. Okay, it's not exactly in the middle. I got a little bit off. And you'll find that with yours. It's okay if it goes a little bit weird. But the shape is a circle hole in the middle of the pot. Okay, and we know it's deep enough because it's that much of my thumb is gone. Okay, so if you've only lost a little bit of your thumb like that, maybe even just down to the nail, you think, oh no, I am definitely not down far enough, because then all of this is just thick, thick clay. Okay, whereas if I put my thumb in there, I know I'm down to about here. Okay, I've got a decent base on the bottom and now I'm ready to widen it out. You can see it's definitely not wide enough yet, is it? So we're trying to get it this kind of size, okay? We don't want it too skinny on the top. Okay, so we're not going to go near the top just yet, because otherwise if we work on the top of our pot, you'll find that your thumb won't be able to reach the bottom. Okay, all right, you'll just be like, oh, it's too wide, I can't quite get in there. Okay, so what I need you to do is make sure that you go right down to the bottom first. Okay, and then I want you to turn your thumb on the side, so you're using the pad again, and we're doing the pinching technique. So we've done the thumb bit, now we're doing the pinching bit. Okay, so you put your thumb in there. Okay, it's right down to the bottom, but it's not pushing down anymore. It's turning on its side and it's doing a little push like this against the fingers, and the fingers are on the outside of the pot. So this is the first form of pot making known to man, because it's so simple. You take a ball of clay, you pop your thumb in, and then you turn it and you shape it just by pinching. Okay, so although I'm telling you it's the first form of pot making to man, it is simple, but it takes a little bit of time to get used to it. So take your time. So the thumb is inside, the side of the thumb, this pad, hopefully you can see that, is right inside, and they're going to push against these fingers. Oh, so I'm kind of bending my thumb a bit like that, and it kind of hurts a little bit if you have to really do it so hard. So take your time, don't do it too hard. Okay, so I'm going around. So you see how this hand is helping me turn the pot, and I'm really taking it really slow. Gosh, this is the thick bit. I can feel it. You can feel how far apart your finger and thumb are on one part. Remember, mine has got like a skinny end and then a really thick end. So I'm at the really thick end. So I just got to push, and I might even push it twice. It's going to leave a bit of a fingery pattern on the outside where these fingers are pressing in, but that's absolutely fine. So let's have a little look. Can you see at all that it is a little bit wider on the inside? If I'm looking in, I know it's wider than this hole. This will not get too wide because I wasn't pushing down there. Okay, it wasn't pushing there, I was pushing down here. Okay, there we go. So I've got that done. This might need another go. I might need to go around one more time, just gently even it out. The idea is we're trying to make it even, okay, evenly thick. So this is this bottom bit done. Now I'm ready to move up to about this bit, but try not to go too close to the top just yet. Okay, so we can reach this bit now. Okay, so we have actually made it a bit taller, and we're going to push out a little bit. Again, it's that bending of your thumb, and if your thumb gets tired, this is where the grown-up, your mum, your gran, your dad, whoever it is who's helping, can take over. Okay, or have a little go. Let them have a little go if your thumb's a little bit tired. But remember, they've got bigger hands, stronger hands, so they can't push too hard. Okay, I'm going to show you what mine looks like now. Starting to open up a little bit here, but definitely inside it's starting to look a little bit like a pot. Okay, it's got a nice curve on it. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. I don't want to keep setting it down here. I don't know if earlier you noticed I turned it like that. I want it to look like a belly of a sheep. So I don't want to keep turning it over and setting it down on this, because this will flatten. So when I'm kind of taking a bit of a break from it, I just turn it on this side, okay, on the lip of the pot, okay, because that's nice and strong, and I won't give it a flat on this part. Okay, so keep curving it in my hand. Okay, it's nice and curved in my hand. And now I'm moving on to the top bit. Now I've done one, maybe two rotations, okay? If you've got smaller hands than me, you can take as many rotations, that means turning it around and around, as you need, but don't make it overly thin, okay? We don't want it to feel like it's going like your fingers going through. It should feel like it's kind of strong enough, but I've made it a little bit thinner. The only thing to really do is keep looking in, thinking, does that look like a little pot? So once we open this top up, you'll notice that it'll look much more like a pot. Okay, so we've done all the hard work, all down there is done. Okay, now we're moving up to this bit. Okay, so we're going to push it out a little bit rather than, rather than trying to maybe make it too thin. We're going to take it gently. So I'm going to do a little pushing out and a rotation. I'm going to do quite a few of these. Okay, not trying to do it too quickly the way I did with the others. So my finger, this pad is sort of moving up, but it's a little bit flatter possibly than before. The thumb, I'm kind of really just pushing it on the edge. So you can see we're trying to make this a little pot. Okay, it's starting to look like a little pot, isn't it? And it doesn't have to be as open as mine. Okay, it can be rounded like this. I just feel that mine is maybe still a little bit thick, and I can do another rotation. Okay, maybe I'm going to move from this bit up. It still feels a little bit thick around there. Maybe I was a bit too quick and a bit too hasty in finishing that bit. So it's still kind of even on the top. It doesn't have to be perfectly even. And I'm just rotating that around and doing that thumb on the inside, fingers on the outside press. See, I'm straightening it up a little bit. But again, if you wanted to do that lovely curve that I had earlier, that's fine too. The idea is that it just looks like a little pot, but it still looks a little bit like a round belly at the same time. I think I might nearly just leave that at that stage before he gets too skinny. Now, my thumb is really long, so I can get down to this bit, but if you've got little fingers, you might find it quite difficult to get down to the bottom. Again, like I said, it's, sometimes it's so big that you can't, you might find it a little bit difficult to reach. So again, use your helper to check that the wall is nice and even. Now, when we have stretched the lip of the pot, the top of the pot so much, you can sometimes see little cracks, especially in this kind of modeling clay. So what I do is I put a little bit of moisture from my hand, or from a little bit of moisture from the cloth onto my hand, and I just smooth around the wrinkles. So I'm pushing a little bit of water back into the clay and it will heal up. Okay. So I'm just transferring a little bit of that water back to the clay. Basically, it just dried up a little bit because I was touching a lot and stretching it. Now, I do want this clay to dry up a little bit so that it can support its shape, but also support these little legs without it sagging. So first job is nearly done, adding a little bit of moisture onto the top, making sure that I'm happy with this little pot. Okay, I'm happy enough with that little pot. It's a round little belly of a thing. Okay. Okay, again, I'm going to just turn it over like this to dry it. Okay, and a quick blast with the hairdryer to firm up the form. Okay, you can see it can change shape very, very easily, and I don't want it to do that. So when I set it down on the table, I kind of want it to stay rounded. So I keep it round, set it down, and blast it with a hairdryer. Okay, so just a quick blast with the hairdryer to firm up the shape. All right, just so that it doesn't wobble around just as much. Okay, so I'm just going to plug in my hairdryer, give it a quick blast. Hopefully you'll see that I don't spend too long hair drying it. All right, that it's not something that I don't really want to firm this up too much. Just a quick blast. Okay, so noise. Okay, so I've just stopped hair drying for a minute just to show you that I've firmed up a little, but there's still a bit of movement in the pot. Still seeing some of those little stretches. I think I would really prefer to dry it up just a tiny bit more. Okay, just a tiny bit more. All right, so I'm going to set it down now on its base. I have hair dried it in the lovely curve, so I'm hoping that when I set it down, it doesn't flatten down, doesn't collapse on itself too much, because I firmed that up. Another bit just for the center. Okay, so again, not very much. I don't want it to change color. That lets me know that it's drying out a lot if it changes color. So I just want it to hold the shape a little bit. So it's not as squishy and it will hold its shape when we put the legs on. Okay, so we've got the main pot done. Now we're going to move on to the small ball of clay. Okay, so this small ball of clay is what we're going to work with next. Okay, again, it's going to be sticky, but we kind of want that sticky because it's going to be broken up into lots of small bits. Okay, so you can roll it around in your hands just to remove most of the surface moisture, but don't worry about rolling it around as much as we did the big ball. Okay, so we're going to break this up into pieces for the legs and for the head. Okay, so there will be little bits left over as well, so that's no problem. You do not need to use it all right? So I want 4 balls of clay that are going to be the legs, okay? And what I do is I just break off a lump, okay? And another, and another, and another. So that will be the 4. Now, they might not be the same size, okay? So I might need to add little bits extra to them. And the only way that I'll really know their size is by balling them up, okay? So if I ball them up, and set them down, they should look like a large Malteser. I think that's pretty large from a Malteser. And if it's going to balance on the legs, that one's a bit bigger, so I'm going to take a wee nip of that off and add it to one of these smaller looking pieces. Okay. I think I was a bit generous with this one. So the idea is if they're going to balance on these legs, that they start off with about the same amount of clay. Okay, so that they're about the same size. And then the same height. I think this little one in the middle just needs a tiny bit of clay, and I'm just taking that little piece of clay and I'm just going to add it on and roll it in. Okay, so that's going to be my 4 legs. Okay, still thinking this guy's a little bit on the chunky side, so I took a little nip away. Okay, so there's my 4 legs. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a lump of clay for the head. Okay, now I do need the head to be bigger than the legs. Okay, so if I take a lump off here and roll it into a ball, I can hold it against the model and think, does that look too big for a head? So it can be slightly smaller if you want. I'm going to leave mine just and I'll model it and show you what it looks like. This clay dries up every time it touches the board. Okay, you can see the watermark being left behind. So I'm just going to either put it back in the bag or on the bag just so that it doesn't get too dry, because I'll need that for the small fiddly bits later on. Okay, so we're going to move on to the legs. I can use my hands to roll them out, or I can use the board to roll them out, okay? If I'm using my hands, I dampen my hands. If I'm using the board, I dampen the board, okay? So that when I'm rolling them, the board doesn't absorb some of the water, that there's water already there, and it just rolls on the surface of the little ball of clay. Okay, so one ball, I can roll it like this a little bit longer in my hands, okay? You see? And it turns into a little bit of a tube. Or I can do the very same thing on the table. Okay, so it's just like taking the bead and rolling a little bit. If you push down hard, it will go flat. So the idea is to try and really lightly do it. Okay. You need to stop when they're more or less the same height. Okay, 1, 2 legs. I'm going to do the rest on the table so you can see that. Just with your fingertips. Sometimes it's more than enough. So I think they're more or less the same height. This one looks a little bit small on camera, but I'll give it another bit. Oh, no, I've gone too much, haven't I? Push down a little bit. 1, 2, 3. Last one. And 4. Okay, what do we think? We think more or less the same height. Okay, so the little legs are going to need hooves. And this little stick here is perfect for that, okay? So if you can see, I'm just going to push this little stick in at the end of the leg, and it's going to create this little hoof effect, okay? So I'm going to do that with all of them. So just the point of the stick, just pressing in a little. Say I'll pop that one in there. Okay, now I have the 4 legs. So obviously the legs are going to go on the bottom of him. All right. I'm going to let them dry up a little bit and I'm going to work on the head for you. Okay. So here's our lump of clay for the head. Again, I have got it quite big. If you want to go slightly smaller, that's absolutely fine. I'll show you the shape. And if I think it looks still too big against my little pot, I can just rip a bit off. Okay. So I've got the ball. Okay. Now the sheep head is a little bit oval. So again, I'm going to do a little bit of rolling, but I don't want it to look like a tube. Okay, I just want a little bit of a ball that's slightly longer. So I'm going to do a little bit rolling. Okay, so before it turns into tube, I stop. Okay, now I want the bottom to be a little bit skinnier for his chin. So I'm actually going to roll just the bottom. If you can see that. Now again, that can happen on the board, but if you are using the board, I would prefer that you use a dampened board, just like we did with the legs. I'll just pop them out of shot. I'll just dampen the board again, just with your little damp cloth. Okay, so it was a ball. I made a little bit oval, and now I'm going to try and just make it a little bit longer at the end. So what I do is I just roll the end. Because you're rolling against a flat, quite often this flattens off. My hand is being a little bit rounded, sort of helps a little bit, but it's up to you. I've got a little bit of a crease on that, so I'm just smoothing that over. So the idea is that it's got a little bit of a chin shape. Okay, so this is going to be the chin, this is going to be the head. It's going to go onto the pot like that. Okay, so I'm hoping that looks okay. It does need a few extras, don't you think? Maybe some ears, some eyes, and maybe a little mouth. The mouth is probably the easiest thing to do. And it's kind of like a Y shape, like a capital Y at the end, you know, at the end of this pointy bit. Okay, so I'm going to try and let you see exactly what I'm doing, but it's hard for me to see when I'm showing you. It is a Y shape, so I do that. Let me just line up my tool. Okay, so they're the 2 points trying to come together to make a Y, and then the Y shape comes like this. You see that? So it's like a capital Y, and that goes like that at the end of the little sheep head. Okay, now mine is dug in quite a bit because I wasn't actually able to see what I was doing, so I'm just going to go back and tidy it up with my stick again so that you can see. Okay, now that can be a little bit higher up if you prefer. I'll show you this little guy again. Hopefully you can see the Y shape. So it can be a little higher up if you like. Let me see what this little woolly guy looks like. I wonder, can you see his? This is maybe a little bit more like a curve. So it can be quite kind of curved if you prefer, rather than this capital, the straight. Oh, no, when I look at it, he's quite capital Y. Okay, so that's this bit. Let's move on up to the little eyes. Okay, dampening my hands, going back to my lump of clay that's sitting on the plastic so it doesn't dry out, and I'm going to take 2 little nips of clay, and these are going to be the eyes. Now the eyes are quite comical and quite like goggly, so they are a tiny bauble. Okay, so that's one, and they're going to dry quite quickly, so you can see my hand is really quite damp. Okay, 1, 2. Now I think I might have one eye slightly bigger than the other, so just as before, if that happens, just take a little bit away, just pinch a bit away. I'm actually going to keep move my head because I keep going to lift bits of clay off my head, thinking it's my extra lump. So there, I've broken a bit off, dumping in my hand. I'm going to try for that eye again. Okay, those 2 little beads of eyes work just fine. While they're just sitting there on the dampened board, I'm going to take another 2 lumps of clay, and these are going to be the ears. They need to be bigger than the eyes, but not too big. Okay, so maybe that size. Let's see how they bead up. Okay, so if I dampen my hand, so you can see this is why your cloth is so invaluable when you're modeling, because you'll be working on different sizes of clay. So it's about this size. So that's it in comparison to the eyes, maybe about twice the size of the eyes. Again, one ear slightly bigger than the other. Rather than making it smaller, I think I'll make the other guy a bit bigger. Just taking a piece of clay and pushing it in. Okay, so the ears. Okay, so the ears are a ball. Okay, I don't really want them to be a ball. I want them to be more pointy. Okay, like this kind of shape. And so they're really just need to have a bit of a squash. So if you take them between your thumb and your finger and just press it down a little. Okay, so I'm not flattening them, just pressing it down. It's kind of a bit like a jelly tot. I've just squashed a little. Now I need one flat bit that's going to join onto the head. So I can just flatten that with my finger. Okay, so now my jelly tot's got one flattened end. And then the other end is going to be pointed with your pinching fingers, my stump fingers and thumb. Okay, and I'm just going to, so there's my flat end, and I'm just going to push this into a bit of a point. Now it does squash a bit, so you need sort of physical modeling where you just move the clay around a bit. I'm pinching it like this to make the point, but it made it a bit thick, so then I pushed it from the other end. So I was pinching here and pushing flat, pinching here and pushing flat, and I get this shape. Let's see if it's stuck to my finger a bit. It's a bit like an ear shape. Okay, so let's try that again. It just wants to stick to me because my fingers are so sticky. So I've got a ball of clay. I'm going to squash it between my thumb and my finger, so it looks a bit like a jelly tot. Then I flatten it on one side, and then this other side, so this is my flat side, and then this other side is the bit that I get between my thumb and my finger, and I give it a little push. Now it does make it a bit thick, so I turn it over, on my thumb and finger I turn, and I press it flat. So it's still got that pointy shape. Okay, perfect. Okay, so you can see they're like little chunky triangles. Now I use my paintbrush end as a bit of a modeling tool to give the ear a little bit of shape. So this rounded end is a great modeling tool. And before we add it on, we might as well try that. Okay, so if I put that ear in my hand, I want it to have a little bit of a curve to it. So I take my paintbrush. So there's the flat end. If you can see, this is the flat end. This is the pointy end. And I'm taking my paintbrush and I'm just giving a little bit of a dent. Okay. Sort of a dent in the center. I've made mine very skinny, that dent, so I'm going to make it a little bit wider. So I'm just sort of smoothing over it. Okay, so that it just looks like an ear which is indented and then slightly curled. I'm going to do that again so you can see. Again, it's very, very small, very, very sticky, very, very fiddly. Okay, so again, if you've got a bigger pair of hands there as a helper, they can help out. Maybe they'll use the stick and you'll do the holding, or they'll do the holding and you use the stick. Okay, so I'm just going to set that in and make a bit of a dent. Okay, it's tiny. Okay, so they'll do just fine as my ears. Now let's go back to that head and join these on. Okay, so remember earlier I asked you to put a little bit of water in this little tub. We're going to need this now for our joining because we're going to start joining all these little bits together. Okay, so I've got my head with my Y. Okay, and I want to put my eyes on. Okay, I'm going to show you my little guy again. The eyes are quite close to the top of the head. All right, so you can experiment and play around. You can take the eyeballs and you can go, okay, would it be cute there? Okay, would it be cute too close? Okay, you're thinking, oh goodness, that's too close to his mouth. It doesn't really look like a sheep when I do it like that. I'm going to bring it right back up again. I really like them there. Okay, now once he gets his ears on, he'll definitely look like a little bit more like a sheep. Okay, so there's where I want them to be. I'm going to take my pointy stick and I'm going to take that one eyeball off and I'm going to put an X marks a spot. I want that eyeball there. Okay, X marks the spot. I need to just give myself a little extra scratches where that eye is going to go. Okay, so the X marks the spot first, then a few more scratches. That's going to make a little rough surface for this little bead to go on. But this bead needs a little bit of rough surface as well. So we can do one side of it, just a couple of scratches. It doesn't matter if it flattens slightly because it'll flatten when you put it on. So I'm doing a rough bit of clay, joining a rough bit of clay. Okay, that means that it won't just sit together, that they will blend together. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of water, just a little dab of water on those scratches. You can see it looks like he's crying. Let's give him a real eye, make him happy again. and just give it a little press into place. Okay. So we're going to do the same thing with this eye. Okay, so you can see how it got flattened slightly and it looks much better. So we're going to take this eye off. Okay, just going to show you this guy, how close the eyes are. Okay, if you want them slightly further apart, that's absolutely fine with you. Both of mine have got them quite close together. I thought it made them look quite cute, but it is up to you. It's your sheep. Okay, so I'm going to do X marks the spot with the pointy part of the stick. And then I'm going to give them a couple more scratches so that it's a nice broken surface for this bit of clay to get stuck onto. Okay, so X marks the spot or lots of scratches. So you see how many scratches I put on that one? One little dab of water on the scratches on the eye, and then you put scratches, that scratchy surface, to that scratchy surface, and then you just press it in. You might even see a little bit of water oozing out, which shows you that those scratches on the head, these are the scratches on the eye have squashed together and pushed the water out. That means they're locked together. If we don't scratch and we just set them together with water, the water dries up and the bits start to peel away. There's nothing worse than when the little models come back to me and the eyeballs are all scattered all over the place, okay, and they're too dry to join on. So it's important that you do your joining really, really well so they stay on. The only way to do that is by doing lots of scratches and a little bit of water. Okay, so let's make these eyes really open up by taking the blunt end of our stick. Okay, so we've just used the pointy end. We're taking the blunt end and we're just going to pop it into the eyeball and give it a little twist, and it really opens the eye up. Okay, so we're giving this little pupil, and it really opens up. This is a bit of a test because if you haven't really joined it very well, sometimes you put the hole in the middle and the eyeball comes off on the end of the stick and you think, I think I might need to do a bit better joining. Okay, so the ears. These little ears with the little indent are the little indent is seen from the front, okay? And little ears go on here, quite high up, and here. Okay, you see how they go on? It looks a bit like a piggy. We'll round them off a bit. They look a bit pointy, a bit like piggy ears. Okay, so we're going to join those on. Okay, let's have a wee look and make sure you look okay. Okay, so what we're doing is we're taking them off, but we know where they're going to go. Leaves a little bit of a mark behind, and we're going to do X marks the spot again, but with the pointy part of the stick. I'm just going to do lots of scratches. I want his ear to go there. I want the other ear to go on the other side. So I'm going to do scratches, scratches, scratches there. Okay, scratches and scratches. And this flat part of the ear gets scratched as well. So you can see this is the bit that we dented with a hairbrush. This is the flat bit, and we just do our scratches. I'm going to scratch this bit, which is the other side, nice flat bit. Okay, and then water. I'm going to add a little tap of water in. Okay, and then just gently squash those ears on. Okay, squash them on. Okay, so I'm just sort of like twisting it on, like I'm holding on, I'm going in, you get it. I'm wiggling it a bit on. Okay, let's have a little look and see how you're looking. Eyeballs look a little bit high, Mr. Man. Now when I turn it around, I'm showing you guys, and when I turn it around, I think, oh dear, I haven't done your eyes quite right. There we go. I think that looks okay. I didn't dent them in, you know, the pupil. I think that's better. Okay, so this is our little head. Now, the curls on his head, even on this little one, he's got some curls on his head. Now, it's important that I show you that now. And then if you're doing a big woolly sheep, you know how to do those because you're going to need loads of them to cover the sheep body. Okay, so if you're doing 2 of them, you're only going to have about this much clay left. So you're not going to get loads of curls done. So the best place to put the curls is on his head. These are really small little bits of clay, okay, and they dry out super duper quickly. So again, it's a damp board. Okay, so the smaller the clay gets, the easier it dries out. I'm going to take a bit like the size of maybe the ear or the eye, and I'm going to make a little ball. Okay, and I'm going to make a worm out of that. Okay, I'm going to roll it either in my hand. I favor my hand because I just can control it better. and grab it if it's going to fall off. Okay, so I roll it like that, like a tiny wiggly worm. I'm going to do another one of those on the table so you can see. So there's the ball. I'm going to roll that on the table, like a wiggly worm. Now my wiggly worm needs to be a little bit skinnier on one side. So just like we did with the head, just roll one side, nice and gently. Don't roll it too fast or too firm. If you roll it fast, it's going to go flat. So if you realize your clay is going flat, then you just need to stop rolling so hard. Just don't push down so hard. Just let it roll on the finger. Okay, so we've got a wiggly worm, but with a pointy end. Okay, that pointy end is going to go for a twirl. It's going to curl back on itself. And it's going to continue rolling and rolling until it makes a curl. Okay, I'm going to show you that again. I need this one a wee bit pointier on one side, so that's my rolling it a little bit more on that side. So it doesn't matter if one end is a little bit thicker, because that's the end of the curl. And this is the beginning of the curl. So I twirl it around. I need a bit of encouragement with this one. And I roll it into a curl. I love these little curls. Okay, so I've got two for the top of his head. I'm going to join those on. If you are rolling out a few more, twirl them as soon as you make them. Okay, so if I've got a big one here, and I'm going to make it on the table, that sort of starts off like a tube, like the legs did. Then I roll a little bit more on one side. Okay, if I leave that and make 20 of them, and then come back to twirl them after I've made the 20, they won't be lovely and soft, and they won't twirl for you. They'll start breaking up because they dry up so quickly. So as soon as you make it, you give it its twirl, and then you can leave the twirl or curl sitting to dry up a little bit. So those little curls are going to sit and dry up. Okay, and maybe you want to make some more. It's up to you. I'm seeing lots of little stretches around the top of my little pot, and I'm going to just add a little bit more water directly from the cloth. So as long as Mum is okay with you doing that, we can smooth that. I just see a couple of little super stretches. Just the nature of this kind of clay. Okay, so I want to join on the legs. Now they are still a little bit soft, even though they've been sitting drying out. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over again. Okay, and the legs are going to go here. Okay, now I do want my name somewhere on this, and it's kind of nice to have it on the bottom rather than on the side of the sheep or on the inside, because sometimes when you scratch your name, it can be a bit rough. Okay, so it is best to have it on the bottom, but you're not going to have a lot of space left over once you add the legs on. Okay, and you might not, so if we put our name on now, you might not be able to see it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place on the legs and see what space I've got. Okay, so you can see there's a bit in the middle, okay, that we could do our name, but if I put the legs on, you'll see first. Okay, so I'm going to set the legs on. This is the bit that's going to join on to the bottom of the pinch pot, because the hoof is in the other end. So it's this bit that's going to need cross hatched. Okay, I'm just going to set it on so the hoof can be seen. So I'm just going to set those two at the front. I'm just setting them on just to see what they look like. Okay, and then these two with the hoof at the, you can see the hoof from the front there, and that one there. Okay, so that's how he's going to be. And this middle bit is perfect for your name. Okay, so it sort of like runs this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one off and do my X marks the spot and an X on top of that. Okay, now I know I need more cross hatching, which I'm going to do in a minute. That one's for that side. X marks the spot. This side needs scratched because this bit has the hoof, so it's the other side. Okay, X marks the spot with this guy. And X goes on the side that doesn't have the hoof. And one last one, X marks the spot, and an X here, opposite end of the hoof. Okay, so you know that an X isn't kind of enough. You know you need to do a little bit more, but it helps us. So before we do that, should we do our name? Okay, as clear as we can. Let's see if we can do it nice and clear. And can you see I'm using the pointy part of the stick again? And I'm just, instead of writing an X, I'm writing my name. Writing on clay is not easy. Okay, so you take your time, do the best job you can, as long as it's big and it's clear. Okay, So I've just gone for my first name. If you're making one as a family, you can put your family name on, like your surname. Or if you're making one each, you could put on your initials. It's up to you. I've made mine really nice and big and clear. Andrea. No one's going to get muddled up. This is totally my sheep and it's coming back to me. Okay, now I'm going to go over my crosshatches. Where I've put an X, I'm going to take my stick and I'm going to scrape it a little bit more. Scrape it a little bit more, a little bit more, and a little bit more. Okay, otherwise the legs might fall off. We don't want that either. So again, the tops of the little legs have got an X, so you can see which bit you need to really scratch. So I'm going to scratch this little bit. And I'm going to cross hatch this little bit. Okay, so that's our scratching, cross hatching done. I'm going to dab a little bit of water just on the bowl, okay, on his little body. And then I'm going to put the legs on. The hooves are going to go in this direction because I'm just going to stick his head on here. If your head's going there, then the hooves will go in that direction. Okay, you want to see them from the front. So I'm just going to take this little leg with the cross hatches. Make sure the hoof's at the front, and I'm going to give him a bit of a squash in. I'm going to see water squirting out, which is exactly what I want to see. Okay, now I might just give this a little squeeze just to make it a little bit longer. Okay, and I'm going to put on this one, scratches to scratches. I'll turn this around so you can see a little bit better. So this is the front. You can see my hoof going to the front, and I'm going to squash him in. Again, if this is a little bit too fiddly for tiny hands, get a grown-up to help. Okay, I'm just changing the shape of the legs a bit because I was a bit worried that I'm squashing them so they're really thick and stumpy. So I'm just making them a little bit thinner, but they never ever will be as skinny as an actual sheep leg, which are really quite fine. It's a bit like our models of people. Our legs in clay are really not that skinny when you model in clay because they would snap. They wouldn't be able to take the weight of the upper part of our modeled body. Okay, so they all tend to be a little bit on the chunky side. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next leg. Remember, this is the front, so I want the hoof to go to the front. Whoop, he fell off. I'm going to give him a bit more of a squish. Really make sure that's stuck on. Okay, and then the last one, I think maybe my water's dried up a little bit on my cross hatching, so hoof to the front and give a little squash in. Okay, so sort of gripping around and pushing it down. Now I can see that my legs aren't quite the right height, the same height. So if I lift it and turn it over and set it on the legs, I can just give it a gentle press down and they should even out. Okay. So the hooves tell you where the front of the pot is. Okay, like we planned. And then that's where the head's going to go. Okay, it's going to go, you'll see, either a little bit above, okay, but there's still a good area of cross hatching, or in this little shorter one, it's going to go all of it on the side with just the tiniest bit above. Okay, so it can be the tiniest bit above or a little bit more above, but the side of the head is getting squashed and joined onto the side of the pot. Okay, so let's do X marks the spot. Pointy part of the stick. X marks the spot. I'm hoping that's right in the middle. Not quite. I'm going to do a couple more scratches using the point of the stick, really scratching firm. I'm going to avoid scratching the top, the tippity top, okay, because that'll split. So I'm scratching here. Lots and lots of scratches. And then this side of the head, the other side of the eyes, is what's going to need to be scratched to join. Can you see? So I'm going to be very careful of his eyes that I've already joined on, and I'm going to scrape, 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 scrape. Little bits of clear falling away because I'm doing such good scraping. Okay, now we're going to add our water, which is going to make the slip, which is just the clay and the water joining together. I might even do a little bit on here. And then we put them together. And now this is a heavy piece of clay. So you really do need to push those together. Now, if I don't support the pot, it's going to squish in a bit. It doesn't matter if it squishes a little bit. I'll show you the other little pot. It did squish a bit, but that's fine. But what I don't want to do is crack it. So I'm being very careful I don't mess up his lovely little face. And I'm holding him from the side. And I'm pushing the pot. Okay. So they're squashed together. Let's hopefully that looks okay. I might even take my paintbrush and smooth around to make sure I'm taking away any slippery water and make sure that it is sticking on. Okay, how's that looking? Little eyes should kind of be wanting to look up at you. Okay, I'm hoping that's well and truly joined on. I think it needs a little bit of tidying up. I can't really see this side when I'm showing the camera, so I'm just going to smooth over some of the cross hatches that I could still see. Just making sure he's well and truly stuck on. I have softened his little mouth a bit, so I'm just opening that up again. And his little ears got a little squished. Okay. Just making sure all of that handling of the head hasn't messed him up. Okay. So some of those little curls that we made earlier are perfect on the top of his head. Okay. So I'm going to support his head. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 little X's and then extra scratches. Just support the head so that you don't, you're not digging so hard that it falls off. Find the best part of the curl, the best side of the curl that you want people to see. That's my best side. The underside, it's a bit messy, a bit squished. I'm going to scratch that. See how I just scratched it with the point of the stick? And then a little splodge of water and support the head again. Find the best, cutest way for that curl to be joined on and give it a press. So same for the other two as well. Find the best bit and scratch the other side. Add a little bit of water, support the head, okay, and smush it on. Okay, again, it might soften, but that's fine. There's my best bit. Scratch the other side, add a little bit of water, support the head, and on it goes. Okay, so there's this little curly head. Now, some people like the sheep to have ram horns, okay, and those curls can work really well for that as well. Okay, I'm going to leave him to rest and hope his head doesn't fall off. Some people also want a little curly tail, okay. The tails tend to be just little straight tails, okay, and sometimes it's important that we don't want it to look like a piggy tail, but it's up to you, okay. So if you want a curly tail or ram's horns, this is what we do, okay. We're going to take a bead of clay, as we've done before, and there's our bead, okay. We're going to roll it either on our hand or the table into the tube, the same shape that we made of the legs, okay. But then, like the head, we're going to roll it just on one side, okay. It's going to misshape a little bit, but just make your pressure really light in your fingers. Just be rolling over your fingers. Okay, this takes a little bit of practice, but look, you've got lots of practice clay, okay. Okay, so this is going to be the horn, okay? So again, a nice thick bit at the bottom. Same as your curls, you're going to do a twirl. Okay, now if you join it on like that, it looks like a horn with this flat bit touching the head and the horn curling out, okay? So I don't know that I have a lot of space on this little guy, but I could kind of show you like that. A lot of cross hatching and joining, okay, so I'll do another little one. So it's a bead of clay rolled into the tube like the legs, only much skinnier, okay. Now you know that if we made our legs that skinny, he wouldn't be able to stand, he'd fall over. He wouldn't be able to support his big tummy on those little legs. Dampened fingers. I'll try and roll it a bit skinnier. Generally, if I'm doing 2 of anything, like 2 ears, 2 eyes, I do them together at this stage so that they're about the same length, about the same size. So you know I use the same amount of clay. So I'm kind of hoping that that's about roughly the same size. And I'm going to twirl that just like we do with the curls. And then it's this thick bit that leaves the head. Okay, I don't have a lot of space, as I've said. I'm only setting these on because my little sheep is just a little baby sheep. He's not a ram, but you can see that they can be the horns, cross-hatched and slipped into place. Okay, so cross-hatch is our scratching. X marks the spot, and lots of scratching. Scratch where it's going to go. At this stage, it's kind of just tucked behind his ear. Okay, so it would be that area just here. Okay, and the same with the other side. Now, if you want a little tail on him, you can do a smaller version. Okay, well, I'll just use this bit. I prefer just a little bit of a tail, but I'm going to squash that slightly. I'm conscious that I don't want it to look like a piggy tail, but all I did was have this shape, the same as we did with the horn, and I just flattened this bit a bit so that it's sort of quite thin when it touches the body. Okay, and then I cross hatch and slip. So this is appearing like it's stuck on. Look at the state of the leg, just smushed him. Okay, it's appearing like it's stuck on, but look, it was just the water holding it. And once the water goes away, that would just come off. So if I wanted that to stay on for forever, I would do X marks the spot. X marks the spot where I'm going to join. I'll break that surface up a bit with the point of the stick. Okay, if any clay goes on the stick, just wipe it away so that you know you're scratching with a nice pointy cutting tool. Okay, so water and then scratches, join scratches, and they press into place. So it's only that bit that's joined. This bit can be a bit curly. Okay, now if you do love the idea of covering it entirely in the little woolly balls, it's just the same again, just loads of them. Okay, so if you're only doing one sheep, like a family sheep, you've got that whole ball of clay to make lots and lots and lots of those. Okay, remember, dampen your table down. Okay, and they can be different sizes. When I did this big fat woolly sheep, I just did some big ones, some small ones, so they all fitted in. Okay, bead, just as we've done before. We'll all be perfect at doing this now. Nice damp hand or damp board. Start off with a ball, roll it into the tube shape, rolling it over your fingers nice and lightly, and then a little bit more on one side. Okay, and then when it's nice and pointy, a bit like a carrot, then you can do your twirl. That's the start of the twirl, and then you just continue it like a Catherine wheel. Okay. I tuck in that end a bit so that it looks a bit more like a curl, and then all I've done was decide where it's going to go. Cross hatch, lots of like X marks spot, lots of scratches, water, scratches on this, and on it goes. Okay, so you can't just set it on. If you set it on, you know it's going to dry up and fall off. Okay, so if you're working on a family project, and I definitely recommend the family helping with these, or what you might find is you get halfway through and think, I am so fed up doing these curls. Okay, so we're going to do the easy peasy curls. Okay, so all of this clay can be used again. Even if you don't have any clay, I'd still like this bag and the little red tag back. But I've got this extra clay and I'm not going to add anything onto my little sheep. So I'm going to put that away. As I've said, if you don't have any, it's fine. Okay, just put the bag and the tag back. These are nice strong bags and they're perfect for recycling for another project. Okay, so let's talk our colours. All right, so just checking that head. I've done a lot of cross hatches that I just didn't need. Right, how are those legs holding out? So mine are really quite squished, and this, see this kind of gripping? Just again, it's our pinch gripping. Can give them that little finer, delicate look without squishing them too much. It's just I kept lifting it and moving it around. And I'm going to recommend that you don't do what I did and lift it and move it around. But that was just to show you. Okay, so the legs should hold their shape better if you don't do the lifting and turning around. Okay, let's talk colours. Obviously, I've got white and black. I've showed you those earlier. Okay, white for the wool. And if you want some black on the face, there's a little bit of black as well. Show you what those colours become when they are fired. Okay, so here's the kiln. Okay, this is my potter's oven. And when I put the clay in there, the clay will become this creamy white color. Okay, this will be the white slip that I've given you. This is porcelain. Okay, this is porcelain clay and lots of water to make this slip. So this is this white color. This is just where you don't have any color at all. So even if you don't put color on an area, say like the inside of the bowl, it will still be glossy and shiny, but it will be a creamier color. Okay, so it's up to you what you want to color. The black, it does look quite dark, maybe a little touch on the gray side, but when it's fired, it becomes a nice jet black. Okay, so these have all got the gloss on them, so you can see the shimmery glaze on them that the lights are catching. So how do we get this color on our little sheep? Okay, well, we sponge it on. Okay, so this is my lovely porcelain. I have given you a thick brush and a thin brush. Thick brush is for daubing on the porcelain, and you have a little sponge for evening it out. The fine brush, which I was using as my slipping brush, I just washed and dried with my cloth, and this is perfect for little fine bits, like if I wanted to blacken the ears. Okay, so I'm going to stir those colours because they've been sitting in our pots, and sometimes because they're clay and water, clay sinks to the bottom and water rises to the top. So if I give them a good stir, then I know I'm working with really good clay. Okay, good liquid clay. So that's my black all stirred through. Okay, so I'm going to do the black at the end. I'm going to do the white first. I want to just splodge bits of white on. Okay, now if you're turning this, turn the board. Okay, then you don't have to touch them and mess them up. Okay, so I'm going to splodge some color on with the paintbrush on this area. That, and I'm going to take a sponge and I'm going to soften over that. Okay, this just evens it up a bit. We do need to be careful that we don't smush them though. Okay, so a little bit of sponging over that. Now we're going to try a little bit of sgraffito at the end to create this curly effect. Okay, and that's scratching through the slip. So we have to put the slip on first and then do the scratching through. So it's going to be a little bit of painting everywhere. So the paintbrush lets you get between his legs and around the tail. The tail wants to wobble a bit. And then the sponge will even out those daubity bits. Okay, because it can look a bit thick and thin. You'll notice I'm not brushing, because if I brushed, I would start lifting this wet color of the clay and they would mix together. And instead of me getting a pure white, I would start mixing the cream and you'd get a creamy white. Okay, sort of like they blend together. Whereas if I keep dipping into my porcelain and just dabbing it on, okay, it puts a layer of slip ready for me to sponge and even it out. So I'm just going to zip around and put some splodgy bits on. Keep an eye on that head, make sure it's nice and strong. Okay, you see the weight of it's wanting to pull my pot a bit, so it's really ready for a bit of hair drying, which is what we're going to do once we get this evened out. If yours is feeling a little bit wobbly and you want to firm it up before you colour it, that's absolutely fine. So the idea of the hairdryer is it dries the water and firms up the clay. Okay, not so that it changes colour, because then it's getting a little bit brittle and fragile when it gets really, really crispy. I'm just going to support that head and put a couple of curls of colour on. And again, if you find after we have applied the slip over our mouth, or Y of our mouth, and it's covered over a little bit, you can just touch that up by scratching through the dry slip, not the wet slip. Okay, we're going to even it all out and dry the slip. I'm just going to lift this guy up and make sure that I'm getting right underneath. I've gone for white right over the ears, and I'll just do a touch of black on them. Okay, so he's really looking a right little mess. Okay, so it's really hard to paint with the slip. I want you to see how messy he's looking. I've lost an eyeball. He's a bit smushy, but that's okay because the sponge is going to lightly dab over all of that and even it out. Okay, so here's my sponge. It's going to dab over it. You can support the shape of the pot. Okay, so if you've gone for the family project and you're doing loads and loads and loads and loads of those lovely curls, at the very end, you can just do this right over the curls. Paintbrush first, dabbing on, and then sponging over to even that out. It's hard to get right between those legs, but the paintbrush should stretch and you should get right in there. Okay, I have to lift them up just to get right in there. Obviously the sponge might not be able to even out in there, but I would like a little bit of color. I'm not going to bother painting the inside, but if you want to, you just paint and sponge. Okay, so it's up to you. That will be cream now when I'm finished rather than white. So if you want it white, paint it and sponge it. Okay, so it is entirely up to you. You decide what you want. Okay, so now I'm sponging over this, evening this all out. And then I'm going to give it a blast with a hairdryer. As I've shown you, the eyes do get a bit covered up, but we can just strengthen that up after it's hair dried. He looks like he's winking at me because he's only got one eye open. Okay, let's see this little winking sheep. Okay, so he's going to need to be hair dried until it's touch dry, not chalky and flaky. Okay, you really need it just for your hands not to get slip off when you're touching it. So obviously now there's no point in scratching it. All I would do would just splodge the colors. Okay, definitely need that hair dried. That little head is tipping forward on us. So if I just hair dry it now, you'll see how long I hair dry it for. You might see while I'm hair drying it that I keep touching it to see have I dried it. What you want it to do is for it to have lost its shimmery shine, the slip to have lost its shimmery shine, but still to be not chalky. Okay, we definitely don't want it to be chalky. Okay, so I'm going to hair dry. Okay, so while I was hair drying that, I kept touching it to make sure that I had that I wasn't transferring, that I just dried it enough, but I was also supporting the head with all that modeling and adding slip. The head was really starting to fall forward. So I just put my hand under and I just held him while I firmed up the pot on the inside and the outside. So I think this is him much, much stronger now. This little leg here looks a little bit misshapen, but I just touch him up. You can see I can touch him much, much better now without him losing his shape. Okay. You did want to stick to the floor a bit, or to the table a bit, because there's quite a lot of slip around his feet, but he came away okay. Okay, so he should be firm enough for you to touch him and him not distort too much. Okay, this slip shouldn't transfer onto your hands. If you need to hair dry yours a little bit more, feel free, but don't allow it to go chalky white like the slip is on the table. When it's thin like this, it goes chalky white. We don't want that. We don't want dust everywhere. Okay, so once you're happy with it, we're going to sgraffito through that porcelain slip and scratch in this lovely twirling pattern. Now, I explained earlier that drawing in clay, or writing in clay, and drawing in clay is not easy. Okay, so you just take your time and you're creating that lovely swirl mark. Okay, so again, hopefully you'll see. I start in the center and I just spiral out like that. Okay. So I just start in the center and I start a twirl like a circle that just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and then I just stop. Okay, so that is sgraffito, scratching through. And so we just continue all the way around. Now your little sheet pot should be a lot stronger for you to touch now. If it's not, then don't attempt to sgraffito, okay? Because each time you touch it, you'll just make it wobbly. You'll just misshape it. Whereas now it's much, much stronger. Just keep keeping an eye on that leg to make sure it is strong. All that moving around, it didn't like it. So please make sure you don't make the same mistake I did and keep moving him around. Move the board. Okay, so I'm just swirling. I'm going to do a couple of swirls and then I'm going to show you it. So I'm holding him like this just so that I can see a little bit better. If you want to get down at eye level on your board, or if yours is strong enough to hold it, that's absolutely fine. Swirling just a small area so you can see. Okay, so that's my woolly area. When I'm done with the woolly area, you'll see there's lots of rough bits. Okay, there are little burrs that get thrown up when you scrape into the clay. But my favorite thing to do with them is just hair dry them. And once they're like crispy dry, they just brush off. So I'm going to show you with this little area. Okay, so again, a little bit of noise. Okay, so that little bit of drying has made them go a little bit chalky white. Okay, so they were so thin that they dried up quickly. And when I do that, they just dust off. If I did them when they were still wet, they would just stick back onto your beautiful swirls that you have just drawn. Okay, so you can continue that pattern all the way around, hair dry it, and then brush those off. Okay, if you just want little areas of sgraffito, that's absolutely fine. Maybe even 2 or 3 on each side, that will be fine. It just depends on what you want for your little sheep. Okay, so everything is holding nicely. I'll just make sure I can see his little hoof at the front. Looks a little closed up with slip. Yeah, that back leg got a little distorted. I'm supporting it while I'm putting in that hoof mark again. Sorry you couldn't see that, but that little back leg is a little bit wobbly. So I'm just going to support that. Okay. Let's see. Just making sure it's squished in again. There we go. That feels better. Okay, if before you sgraffito you think he's not wide enough, you can put a second layer of porcelain on, okay? Or if when you scratch it you think, okay, I like the scratches, I want them to be softer, okay? I don't want to see the cream, I want it all to be white. You can lightly put a little bit more porcelain over it. Now that's going to take away your sgraffito, but you'll still have a bit of the mark. So I'm going to do this for demonstration purposes. You don't have to do this if you don't want. Okay, I only want the tiniest bit of slip on it, and I'm going to sponge that lightly over, and it's going to soften it down a bit, okay, and take away the creaminess of the clay coming through. and soften the sgraffito effect. I still can see it, but it's just less dramatic. Okay, so if you want to do that, you can. And as I'm holding that up too, look at all these spaces I need to fill in. With my fine brush, I can do that. Okay, again, with the little Y of the mouth, it's gone a little. So I can just take my stick. I can just make sure that that's nice and strong. Okay, I'm going to lift him up so I can look at his little face. And I'm just going to mark that in. Again, just as we did before, using the side of the stick. I'll hold him upside down so you can see the side of the stick, and I'm putting that Y shape in. Okay, just so it's a little bit opened up. The eye opened up just fine, but just give them another little twirl. Okay, so I talked about using black. Some people like black on the entire head and leave the eyes white, but I find that's really hard to work with slip. And so if you did want a little bit of black, the ears are pretty good for that, the center of the ears. And our fine brush is perfect for that. You just put a little bit of slip on your brush, trail off all the drippy bits. I'm actually going to lift them up so that I can see the bit of the ear. And I'm just going to paint a little bit of black in there. I'm kind of dropping it in little bit by little bit. Okay, so I'm just, because I created that little recess, remember with the paintbrush at the beginning? Okay, I'm going to do this other ear. So just tapping off some of that slip. This one curled a bit. So you can see I'm dipping in 2 or 3 times rather than doing a big heavy load to begin with in case it drips everywhere. Okay. He's a funny little character. Okay. So if you did want black around the face, you can take your fine paintbrush and work around in the black. I don't. Okay, I don't want it to get too messy. I want to wash off that black, and I'm going to touch up the bits around the face. Okay, so the little detail bits that I couldn't get at, the fine brush will get in there, and I just dip and dab. Okay, so that I can get that color in around those little areas. Okay, I think you can see maybe that I'm just dipping into the slip and dabbing on. Remember, I'm not trying to do a brush technique, just a dip and dab. This is going to maybe make his face really white. Be careful around those eyes. Okay, so the center of the eyes, because it's nice and deep, appears black, but I don't try and get color in there, as it just would be too awkward. Again, if you want to do a little bit of sponging over that, daubing on, you can leave it heavy the way it is, or you can sponge it. Okay, taking the sponge and lightly daubing at his face. Okay, and that'll even it out a bit. I think there's areas that I could, like the bits around the legs that I really needed to strengthen. We'll need another bit of slip, little porcelain slip, another bit of daubing. But as you lift it up, you'll see all the bits that it needs. And it's your piece. You decide when it's done. Okay, just be careful you don't go over your name. I'm able to lift mine up and work a little bit of color around those legs now that they're firmed up a little bit. But don't go over your name, or I won't be able to read it and I won't be able to give it back to the right person. We want all of these sheep going back to the right makers. I'm just going to daub a little bit more slip very lightly over the scratches to give you that slightly softer effect that I talked about. Okay, I think I'm pretty close to end. Obviously, I haven't done scratches all the way around, and you have plenty of time when I sign off to work on all of your scratches, okay? I wouldn't leave it till he's got crispy dry, because as I say, when you scratch, instead of it coming off in a lovely pattern, bits will flake off in lumps because it's too dry. A bit like the board is very crispy, you know, it just flakes off. Big lumps will just flake off just like that, just flake away. Okay. So as I say, when you are finished, he should be kind of supporting himself. The legs should be strong. Okay. And the color should be good. I keep finding little bits I want to keep touching up. He should be hair dried so that there's no stickiness to him. Okay. When he's finished, he's going to go into this mini crate inside your clay crate. Okay. This is going to be his little house. Okay. If there are two, they will fit side by side, and there will be a little bit of bubble wrap. Okay. In case they roll around. Okay. So this is just to keep them from rolling around. So there might be one on one side and one on the other. Just making sure mine's dry enough to lift. Okay, so this guy will go here, and I will put a little bit of bubble wrap around him, and the other guy will go on the other side. I actually think he might need most of the bubble wrap. I'll make sure there's enough to wrap around both. Okay, this just keeps them from knocking around. Okay, so hopefully you can see that that's him padded. The other one will go here if you've got another one, and padding around him as well. They're not tall, so the lid should come down without knocking them, and that should be them safe for travel. Remember, I'm going to be popping them in the back of the car and going over some bumpy roads, so we want to make sure that they are packed so that they are not going to wobble. Okay, if they wobble and bits break off, then you know, you don't want to have missing eye and missing ears and a missing leg. Okay, you want to make sure that they're well supported. Okay, I'm not going to shake them or anything. Okay, so cleaning up time, how we put things away. Now, if you're still working, that's fine, you just continue on. But when you are done, that most precious crate, okay, the mini crate, goes inside the clay crate. Okay, so that's it in there, safe and sound. Okay, that's the most important thing. Okay, the colors, we just, if you've got any white left, okay, you just lid it. Okay, so that's my black. I hardly used any of that at all. It's the white that you'll have lots of, because there's lots and lots. Obviously, if you want a black sheep, you might run out of black. I'll try and put a little bit more black than I'd anticipated in case you do want a black sheep, but they do get quite messy, okay, because black is really, really messy and slip. Not to put you off, I will put enough black in just to be on the safe side, okay? You're going to just wipe over your paintbrushes. I'm just giving them a little wash to get some of that dusty slip off. Okay, as it dries, it becomes very dusty, so it'll be really handy if you just give them a little wipe over. Okay, and your sponges, they will need a good dip in your water and just squeeze them out. They don't need to be wrapped in plastic or kitchen paper. They are just fine the way they are. Just give them a squeeze out. Okay, just like that. This water we can discard. Okay, and just give them a little. It'll be a bit mucky at the bottom. Okay, so give that just a little wipe. Okay, now the lid will go on that and keep that from rattling around. Your sponge can go in there and your little stick fits in there as well. Okay, that can go on top here. Okay, your paintbrushes can go in here, and your board will need a wipe. It's a real mess of a thing. Okay, now when they come back, they get sanitized, but all of this dry dust can flake everywhere. So it's great if you could just take the damp cloth that you've used throughout your workshop and just give a little wipe over and just get all of that slip lifted. Okay, there we go. Now that can go on top of the whole thing. The lid can go on the top so that they're now watertight. Okay, so they can sit on your doorstep, and even if it rains, your work is in 2 crates. Okay, so the rain will not get at your work. Okay, it'll be kept safe. Okay, it's going to take about a week and maybe a little bit more to dry these out. They are going to go into this kiln when they're completely dry and get their fresh firing. Then I'll take them out and they'll be that dry chalky clay, okay, that biscuit clay, that it's the first firing of clay. Then I can dip them in lovely shiny glaze, and the shiny glaze will go over them and your color will show right through. So the more white you put on, the more they'll be. But the clay itself is a creamy white, so it's a really good base to put the white onto. Okay, and then once they're through the firing does take a full day to fire up and a full day to cool down again. So hopefully they're all going to be lovely and shiny. Once they're nice and cool, I'll get them all wrapped up and send them right back to you. Okay, so if you haven't finished, as I say, just you keep working away and making all your swirls and your curls and your pattern. And when you're finished, then you can do all of that tidying up, that drying and that tidying up process. Okay, so I really hope as a family or an individual, you've really enjoyed making your little silly sheep. Okay, thank you so much for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you guys again. Okay, take care.